Leagues of Local Barangay Units and Elective Officials David V. Cumlic. Facts: in his capacity as Barangay Chairman of Barangay 77, Zone 7, Caloocan City and as President of the Liga NGMGA Barangay SA Pilipinas, Alex L. David filed a petition for prohibition to prohibit the holding of the barangay election scheduled on the second Monday of May 1997. Petitioner Liga NGMGA Barangay Quezon City Chapter represented by its President Bonifacio M. Rillan filed a petition to seek a judicial review by certiorari to declare as unconstitutional 1 Section 43 of RA 7160, which reads as follows: The term of office of barangay officials and members of the Sangguniang Kabataan shall be for 3 years, which shall begin after the regular election of barangay officials on the second Monday of May 1994. 2 Cumlic Resolution NOS 2880 and 2887 fixing the date of the holding of the barangay elections on May 12, 1997 and other activities related thereto. 3. The budgetary appropriation of P400 million contained in Republic Act No. 8250, otherwise known as the General Appropriations Act of 1997, intended to defray the costs and expenses in holding the 1997 barangay elections. Both petitions, though worded differently, raise the same ultimate issue. How long is the term of office of barangay officials? Petitioners contend that under Sector 2 of RA 6653 the term of office of barangay officials shall be for 5 years. This is reiterated in RA 6679. Petitioners further aver that although Sector 43 of RA 7160 reduced the term of office of all local elective officials to 3 years, such reduction does not apply to barangay officials because RA 6679 is a special law applicable only to barangays, while RA 7160 is a general law which applies to all other local government units. RA 7160 does not expressly or impliedly repeal RA 6679 insofar as the term of barangay officials is concerned, while Sections 8 of Article X of the 1987 Constitution fixes the term of elective local officials at 3 years. The same provision states that the term of barangay officials shall be determined by law, and thus it follows that the constitutional intention is to grant barangay officials any term, except 3 years, otherwise there would be no rhyme or reason for the framers of the Constitution to accept barangay officials from the 3-year term found in Sections 8. Article X of the Constitution. Cumlic maintains that RA 7160 repealed all other special laws relied upon by the petitioner. Issue 1. The term of the barangay officials should be limited only to 3 years. Held yes ratio. In light of the brief historical background, the intent and design of the legislature to limit the term of barangay officials to only 3 years as provided under the Local Government Code emerges as bright as the sunlight. The cardinal rule in the interpretation of all laws is to ascertain and give effect to the intent of the law. And 3 years is the obvious intent. First, RA 7160, the Local Government Code, was enacted later than RA 6679. It is basic that in case of an irreconcilable conflict between 2 laws of different vintages, the later enactment prevails. Leges posteriores priores contractarius abrogant. The rationale is simple: a later law repeals an earlier one because it is the later legislative will. It is to be presumed that the lawmakers knew the older law and intended to change it. In enacting the older law, the legislators could not have known the newer one and hence could not have intended to change what they did not know. Under the Civil Code, laws are repealed only by subsequent ones and not the other way around. Under Sections 43C of RA 7160, the term of office of barangay officials was fixed at 3 years, which shall begin after the regular election of barangay officials on the second Monday of May 1994. This provision is clearly inconsistent with and repugnant to Sector 1 of RA 6679, which states that such term shall be for 5 years. Note that both laws refer to the same officials who were elected on the second Monday of May 1994. Second, RA 6679 requires the barangay voters to elect 7 kagawads, and the candidate obtaining the highest number of votes shall automatically be the punang barangay. RA 6653 empowers the 7 elected barangay kagawads to select the punang barangay from among themselves. On the other hand, the Local Autonomy Code mandates a direct vote on the barangay chairman by the entire barangay electorate, separately from the 7 kagawads. Hence, under the code, voters elect 8 barangay officials, namely, the punang barangay plus the 7 kagawads. Under both RA 6679 and 6653, they vote for only 7 kagawads, and not for the barangay chairman. Third, during the barangay elections held on May 9, 1994, the voters actually and directly elected 1 punang barangay and 7 kagawads. If we agree with the thesis of petitioners, it follows that all the punang barangays were elected illegally, and thus, petitioner Alex David cannot claim to be a validly elected barangay chairman, much less president of the National League of Barangays, which he purports to represent in this petition. It then necessarily follows also that he is not the real party in interest, and on that ground, his petition should be summarily dismissed. Fourth, in enacting the General Appropriations Act of 1997, Congress appropriated the amount of P400 million to cover expenses for the holding of barangay elections this year. Likewise, under Sections 7 of RA 8189, Congress ordained that a general registration of voters shall be held immediately after the barangay elections in 1997. These are clear and express contemporaneous statements of Congress that barangay officials shall be elected this May, in accordance with Sector 43C of RA 7160. Fifth, in Paras vs. Kumlik, this court said that the next regular election involving the barangay office concerned is barely 7 months away, the same having been scheduled in May 1997. This judicial decision, per Article 8 of the Civil Code, is now a part of the legal system of the Philippines. Sixth, petitioners pompously claim that RA 6679, being a special law, should prevail over RA 7160, all alleged general law pursuant to the doctrine of Generala Specialibus non derogant. Petitioners are wrong. RA 7160 is a codified set of laws that specifically applies to local government units. It specifically and definitively provides in its Sector 43C that the term of office of barangay officials shall be for 3 years. It is a special provision that applies only to the term of barangay officials who were elected on the second Monday of May 1994. With such particularity, the provision cannot be deemed a general law. Petitioner may be correct in alleging that RA 6679 is a special law, but they are incorrect in stating that RA 7160 is necessarily a general law. It is a special law insofar as it governs the term of office of barangay officials. In its repealing clause, RA 7160 states that all general and special laws, which are inconsistent with any of the provisions of this code, are hereby repealed or modified accordingly. There being a clear repugnance and incompatibility between the two specific provisions, they cannot stand together. The later law, RA 7160, should thus prevail in accordance with its repealing clause. When a subsequent law encompasses entirely the subject matter of the former enactments, the latter is deemed repealed. Issue 1. The 3-year term is in accord with the Constitution. Held yes ratio. Petione Erliga NGMGA Barangay Quezon City Chapter posits that by accepting barangay officials whose term shall be determined by law from the general provision fixing the term of elective local officials at 3 years, the Constitution thereby impliedly prohibits Congress from legislating a 3-year term for such officers. We find this theory rather novel but nonetheless logically and legally flawed. Undoubtedly, the Constitution did not expressly prohibit Congress from fixing any term of office for barangay officials. It merely left the determination of such term to the lawmaking body, without any specific limitation or prohibition, thereby leaving to the lawmakers full discretion to fix such term in accordance with the exigencies of public service. It must be remembered that every law has in its favor the presumption of constitutionality. 38. For a law to be nullified, it must be shown that there is a clear and unequivocal breach of the Constitution. 39. To strike down a law as unconstitutional, there must be a clear and unequivocal showing that what the fundamental law prohibits, the statute permits. The petitioners have miserably failed to discharge this burden and to show clearly the unconstitutionality they aver. There is absolutely no doubt in our mind that Sector 43C of RA 7160 is constitutional. Seconds. 8. Article X of the Constitution limiting the term of all elective local officials to 3 years, except that of barangay officials, which shall be determined by law, was an amendment proposed by Constitutional Commissioner Ilario G. Davide, Jr. According to Fr. Joaquin G. Bernas, S.J., the amendment was readily accepted without much discussion and formally approved. Indeed, a search into the record of the Constitutional Commission yielded only a few pages of actual deliberations. Issue 1. Petitioners are stopped from challenging their 3-year terms. Held yes ratio. Respondent Commission on Elections submitted as Annex A of its memorandum. 43. A machine copy of the Certificate of Candidacy of Petitioner Alex L. David in the May 9, 1994 barangay elections, the authenticity of which was not denied by said petitioner. In said Certificate of Candidacy, he expressly stated under oath that he was announcing his candidacy for the office of Punang Barangay for Barangay 77, Zone 7 of Caloocan City, and that he was eligible for said office. The CUMLIC also submitted as Annex B 44 to its said memorandum, a certified statement of the votes obtained by the candidates in said elections. If, as claimed by petitioners, the applicable law is RA 6679, then petitioner David should not have run and could not have been elected chairman of his barangay because under RA 6679, there was to be no direct election for the Punang Barangay. The Kagawad candidate who obtained the highest number of votes was to be automatically elected barangay chairman. Thus, applying said law, the Punang Barangay should have been Ruben Magalona, who obtained the highest number of votes among the Kagawad's 150, which was much more than David's 112. The electorate should have elected only 7 Kagawads and not 1 Punang Barangay plus 7 Kagawads. In other words, following petitioner's own theory, the election of petitioner David as well as all the barangay chairmen of the 2 Liga petitioners was illegal. The sum total of these absurdities in petitioner's theory is that barangay officials are stopped from asking for any term other than that which they ran for and were elected to, under the law governing the very claim to such offices, namely, RA 7160. The Local Government Code. Petitioners' belated claim of ignorance as to what law governed their election to office in 1994 is unacceptable because under Art. 3 of the Civil Code, ignorance of the law excuses no one from compliance therewith.